Hey YouTube, hope you're all doing well. We've had another week of the ANZ HCS Pro League. This is now week 2 of season 1, and obviously we're going to go over it all. So looking firstly at your top 8 teams, we had some invited teams from last week and 4 new qualified teams from the open tournament held the Sunday beforehand. So our invited teams here were Divine Mind, Chiefs, Mindfreak and Fragers, and the seeding that they got placed was Divine Mind 1, Chiefs 2, Mindfreak seed 3 and Fragers seed 4. And this was a bit weird. I think that the way that it actually works in reality is they invite the top 4 teams back, but then the order that they get put in is based on the number of points of each of those teams. So if we look at Chiefs, obviously they won last week, so you would expect them to take seed 1, but I believe they took seed 2 because Chiefs played with Flex last week and they're playing with Madzi, their proper 4th this week. So Madzi didn't have any real pro points because pro points from the preseason were subject to a 90% decay, meaning that the Chiefs roster overall, if you add all their points up, had less than Divine Mind, who all competed last week, which is why Divine Mind took the number 1 seed and then etc through to number 4, and why Fraggers got invited when they're obviously clearly a new team, because you had the names like Flex Reigns, who got 3,000 points, I believe, from winning with Chiefs the week before. Then, looking at the qualified teams, we had Dire Wolves coming in at seed 5. We had Immunity returning in seed 6, 1620 Kings in seed 7, and BBR in seed 8. So, just looking at a couple roster changes really quick, you'll notice that there's no Deathruptor fans in here. Jordan, AU, and Rice got dropped by Deathruptor fans, and they found themselves in Mindfreak. And you'll see 1620 Kings, they were playing with Sways, OC, and Bandit in NZ instead of Ryu and Benji, because Deathruptor fans picked up Ryu and Benji. Unfortunately, Deathruptor fans didn't manage to secure themselves a top 8 this week and didn't find themselves in the Pro League. Looking at BBR, BBR's playing with Codestar instead of Dante, who we thought would go back to BBR after they came back from holidays, but obviously he's found himself in a top 2 roster, so I think he wants to stay there for now, and we'll have to see if anything changes there. The big new name that we're talking about this week is Immunity with Hef, Benno, Voltage, and Ogre 1. So everyone's been anticipating their return, and that is, they got quite a bit of airtime this week. Without further ado, we shall get into it. This week I'm going to be doing it slightly differently. I want to touch on more games, but go a bit less in depth. If you do like that kind of style, let me know below so I can kind of adjust the way that I'm doing these things, and we'll get right into it. So looking at our first game, we've got the winners finals between Divine Mind and BBR, and as I've alluded to, there's obviously going to be a bit of a rivalry here because Dante, obviously the old member of BBR, coming up against his old team. I think that these BBR boys will feel slightly hardly done by from Dante, although they'll understand it, they're all close mates. They'll still be like, man, you left us, you know, what are you doing? So in this first game, there's a lot of continuous attempts at pulls through utility side by BBR, which were proved to be unsuccessful, and Divine Mind proved way too strong, taking the game 5-0, and Berserk here was doing an excellent job on the side of Divine Mind to control the map, while Slays was the main Slayer, going 23 kills, 10 assists and 14 deaths overall, so big numbers out of Slays to win that first game for them. Moving on to game 2 was a Street Slayer, and despite keeping the game relatively close the whole way through, BBR go down 50-42 in the end. So Divine Mind really made the game really easy for themselves as the team who consistently secured the Rockets and the Bulldog and put them to really good work to shut down any attempts that BBR were making at team pushes. Slays again here was the main Slayer, going 29 and 11. So for me, I think he's really starting to shine as the main talent on this Divine Mind team, and I'll have to keep an eye on him looking forward. And that knocked BBR down into the losers bracket. Divine Mind move on in the winners bracket. So looking at the winners semi-finals now, we had Chiefs taking on Immunity. Game 1 was Recharge Oddball, and Chiefs do manage to take this game 2-0, but in a bit of a perplexing manner. So in the first round, Immunity have 2 rounds of Slays on Chiefs towards the tail end of the round, while Chiefs only have a 20-point lead, and they really give themselves an opportunity to win the round if they play alright, but somehow Immunity managed to get very little ball time off of these kills in what I would call a judgment error, and let Chiefs close the game out 100-72. And yeah, with those kills, they decided to bait the ball a bit more than I thought they would have, because they did get 6 or 7 kills in this time and really didn't manage to turn it into much ball time. And this really just this loss snowballed into a round 2 loss in another 100-23 fashion, and gave Chiefs a 2-0 overall win in that game mode. So Chiefs take the game to Aquarius Slayer as well in a 50-33 fashion, and Barcode drops a 19 kill and 5 death game, which isn't a surprise since you start the game off early with 4 1v1 heatwave kills and control of the first and second camouflage. But it's this play from Madzi here that I really wanted to highlight. Madzi, to me, is a bit of an unsung hero on the side of this Chiefs team, but I think it's his ability to apply pressure in every situation that really gives this Chief roster their feel of an all-encompassing pressure on the map. You can see here he's one shot down on P1, still looking for cleanup angles on the enemy players. Then, knowing his teammates are pressuring the base, he challenges to apply pressure while still half shield, playing his shields and cover perfectly and managing to pick up another kill as a reward. So a stellar performance out of Madzi in this game, although the statistics don't necessarily reflect it, and Immunity get knocked down into the losers bracket. Chiefs go on to the winners final. The broadcast team then followed Immunity straight to their next map, which was against Fragers, and this Fragers team, consisting of Ninjestics, Flex Reigns, Juckle, and Lucas, are a newly formed team of what you would consider raw talent that probably went into this series really wanting to test themselves against Immunity. And the 3 maps they were getting the opportunity to do it on were Bizarre Flag, Street Slayer, and Live Fire Stronghold. So the game 1 Bizarre Flag was quite boring, I thought, from a viewing perspective. After the first half of the game, Fraggers went up 2-1, and then neither team could really get much going after that. So the final scoreline was 2-1 in Fraggers' favour. Player of the match for me, based on statistics alone, was definitely Juckle, who went 25-15, so that was a good performance out of the young lad. And we went into a game 2 Street Slayer. Flex starts this game off absolutely massive, with 6 of his team's 7 kills in the first 60 seconds of the game, but Immunity doesn't care. They're not ready to be kicked out of the tournament at this stage, not without a medal around their neck, and they quickly tie the game up, and then managed to develop a 6-kill lead at the 26-20 mark and keep this momentum, doubling up on their advantage to close the game out with a 12-kill lead in a 50-38 fashion, taking us to a game 3 on Live Fire Strongholds, where Immunity were just dominant, and they proved that to us here. There's no other way to say it. They held Fraggers on 1 point for 3/4 of the game, managing to accrue a 188-1 point lead before Fraggers could answer back in any way, shape or form. And by this point, the difference was just insurmountable, and Fraggers managed to only put 136 points on the board before Immunity closed it out 250-136. Immunity managed to get the job done and close out the series 2-1, eliminating Fraggers in 5th, 6th, and moving on to play against Dire Wolves in the elimination semis, where they also scrape out another 2-1 win, guaranteeing themselves in a spot in the elimination finals to play the loser of the winners finals between Divine Mind and the Chiefs. Looking at this winners finals between Divine Mind and Chiefs, we have our game 1 is Recharge Strongholds, and Divine Mind are looking really good in the early game with a points advantage and generally having the kill advantage and control of the map overall, up until we saw a masterful camo play out of Prades. And when I've spoken to Seduce before, he has said Prades is the smartest player in this scene. We kind of see an inkling of that here with 2 teammates dead. Instead of going for the camo, he decides to bait out Divine Mind, using his teammate around top gold for information and then for the assist later on. Chiefs managed to kill both Divine Mind players, and then Prades goes on to secure the camo, which they put to use, getting Divine Mind on a triple cap shortly after and blow out the lead to win 250-130, and then Chiefs go on to win the Bizarre Slayer 50-38 and win Aquarius Flag 3-1, securing themselves a spot in the grand finals yet again to take on the winners of the elimination finals, which is between Divine Mind and Immunity, which did end up being a 3-1 in Divine Mind's favour. Unfortunately for Immunity, they get knocked out here. I'm sure that they probably wanted more from themselves, but I think this being their first week, that was still a fantastic showing from them. So we'll look at the map scores here. We had Recharge Oddball, which went 2-0 Divine Mind's way. Livefire Slayer 50-47 in the favour of Immunity. Street Strongholds was 250-54 in favour of Divine Mind, and Bizarre Flag 3-1 also in favour of Divine Mind. So you can really see the difference in the objective gameplay looking at these scores. So it looks like, to me, Immunity has a bit of a ways to go if their intention is to be breaking into the top 2 at this stage. Hef did say in one of his interviews that they hadn't had more than 3 scrims together yet, so that's definitely going to play a role in their objective efficiency, and we'll just have to keep an eye on Immunity over the coming weeks and see what they can do. So that said, Immunity did have the spotlight shone on them quite a bit this week, so I managed to compile all of their statistics from every single game that they played, not just on broadcast here, and I put them together for us to have a quick squeeze at. So obviously down the bottom we've got all of their results against every team, and looking at the statistics, unfortunately Hef struggling a little bit in the kills department, everyone else getting over the 200 kill mark, Hef only 179, but it was Ogre 1, I guess you could say, was the standout player on the side of Immunity here with the closest KD to a neutral, 0.99. Benno with a 0.98 and Voltage with a 0.95. Hef obviously struggling there with a 0.8 overall, so if we can see a bit of individual improvement out of Hef, that's going to go a long way for them. And I think, like I said before, these boys, if they can get some more scrims under their belt, think about the way they want to be playing the objective, I think they're going to be a real force to worry about over the next coming weeks, and we're just going to have to wait and see what they end up managing to do in this scene. Move to the grand finals, obviously between Divine Mind and Chiefs, and here Beaston really struggled in the winners finals. So I think that if Divine Mind really wanted a shot at this, we needed to see Beaston step up individually if they wanted to cause the upset. And the first set of maps that they had to get it done were Livefire Oddball, Aquarius Slayer, Street Strongholds, Bizarre Flag, and Recharge Strongholds. So this game 1 Livefire Oddball was tied up 1-1 in round counts. As we headed into round 3, scoring was pretty sparse, sporadic, messy, all these things, but Divine Mind with a team milking the precious seconds where they could, even in some really obscure situations, to give themselves an early lead 44-25. But Chiefs are the first team to get some kills around a proper setup in back A, or garage as some call it, and they execute on their macro perfectly from this point, making sure that with each round of slays they get while holding the ball, they push out an entire side of the map so that their ball carrier could freely move every time from side to side away from the Divine Mind spawners, and they close the game out 100-45 here. And the defining factor, definitely, I hate to say it, is just Barcode. Every player on the side of Chiefs went negative except for Barcode, who went 46 kills and 25 deaths when all was said and done at the end of this game, which was actually enough to counteract all the negative kill death performances on his team's side and still make every single player on Divine Mind have a negative KD at the end of this game. So everyone in the lobby was negative except for Barcode, who went plus 21 overall. So you can really see here the difference that this kid is making in these games. So we went into Aquarius Slayer game 2, and Divine Mind are up 30-25 in the mid game. Dante gets camo control and really puts the heat wave to use this game, and Divine Mind managed to push themselves out to an 8 kill lead around that mid game mark, and Chiefs threatened to bring it back, but Divine Mind say no thank you, we do not want you going up 2-0 this early on, and Divine Mind swing it back in their favour and end up extending their lead to close out the game 50-39 on the back of a massive performance out of Dante, who gets 20 kills, 6 assists and 8 deaths. I think this is largely due to the heatwave control. Dante controlled it for a large portion of this game and put it to really good use. So that's something that these boys need to isolate and try to figure out in the future. These power weapons, clearly a big part, and you'll see even more so in this Street Strongholds game 3. Divine Mind come out the gates really hot, especially Berserk, who's leading the lobby in kills early on, but Madzi, talking about power-ups, manages to grab himself some rockets and a triple kill, and the Chiefs use this to get Divine Mind on a triple cap and really put them on the back foot, and then do not give Divine Mind any room to breathe whatsoever and close the game at 250-80. And I got a fun fact for you. Before this triple kill, At the very start of this triple kill, the game is tied up 80-80. Then Madsey's first kill is at the 4-minute 12 mark, and the game finishes at the 6-minute 12 mark. So if you ever wanted to know how powerful one set of rockets can be, you now have your answer. In the right hands, it is literally enough to make the second best team in the region just crumble because of the foundation that it gives a team like Chiefs to set them up on a spawn trap and execute on their rotations perfectly. And they literally close the game out in 2 minutes, which is almost perfect if you think about 2 points per second, and they needed 170 points to finish the game. 2 minutes is only 120 seconds, so pretty damn close to perfect. And that game was just mental to watch from a viewing perspective. You really thought Divine Mind had a chance, and then just flip it on its head, finish the game. No thank you. We're not going to a game 5 against you, Divine Mind, because then they come out in Bizarre Flag, probably their best game mode, and Divine Mind really just couldn't come back. And Chiefs closed the game out, I believe, 4-1 to finish this series 3-1 overall. So I think Divine Mind showed a lot of promise this week. This was, of course, against the Chiefs' full roster, and they were by no means out of some of these games. The Aquarius Slayer game is, I think, what you might call a bit of a dominant performance when I'm talking about the top 2 teams, and for Divine Mind to get an 11-kill win here, that was a big performance out of them. And the odd ball was obviously pretty close as well. If a couple things go differently in the side of Divine Mind's favour, you know, they managed to get a couple of clutch kills in 1v1s against Barcode. I think they could have won that too. And really, looking at this, I think the recipe for success for Divine Mind is going to be either 1, figuring out how to shut down Barcode, or 2, Divine Mind need to culminate their own individual who can shine just as brightly as Barcode, who I think really is just the difference in these games. And until they can get someone to do that, to perform similarly to Barcode, I just don't see any of these teams beating Chiefs over the course of a 5-game series, and that's just unfortunately the way it is. So an interesting thing, I think, would be to see how the Chiefs would perform without Barcode. If you sub Barcode in, for example, for Flex Reigns, who's been their dominant substitution they've used when people like Pips or Madsey haven't been able to play. And yeah, I'd love to see that and see how this team really performs. Obviously, the rest of them on the side of Chiefs, solid players, but it's just those performances, like on that odd ball from Barcode, that it's unquestionable the amount of carry that he has on that team. So the final results: Chiefs in first, Divine Mind second, Immunity with a solid first performance coming in third, Dire Wolves fourth, improved from their 8th last week, Fragers coming in 5th, 6th, Mindfreak 5th, 6th, and 1620 Kings and BBR sharing that 7th/8th spot. And that's your week 2 of Season 1 ANZ HCS Pro League officially recapped. Until next time, keep putting your best foot forward. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I'm seeing you in the next one. Peace out.
Wake up, it's me. You gonna follow your dreams, or are you just gonna be another cog in the scene? You feel the hope in this beat, yeah, the hope that you need to proceed and be exactly what you want it to be.